Good morning and welcome back to the Seasons of Self-Actualization mini podcast where we have 10 to 20 minute digestible episodes every Monday morning that will bring perspective, action tips, and accountability. By being involved in this community, if you're new, make sure to check out last week's video. They have the intention to build off of each other, and in that one I shared what I have found as the ultimate secret to empowering yourself. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out. But in this episode today, we are going to dive into more practical ways that we can start to implement the practice to be able to feel even more empowered in our daily lives. Today with me, I have my Freedom Frappe. The idea behind this one is to liberate yourself from the all or nothing mindset, and that is kind of what we are going to dive into today in terms of like how we're going to take steps instead of going at it with the all or nothing mindset. I thought it was like a cute little drink for today. If you don't know already, I do post the recipes in the description and also on my short format content. So on my Instagram Reels, on my YouTube Shorts, on my TikTok, all linked down below, and otherwise it's just at Shyla Sky. So without further ado, let's jump into today's affirmation. Small steps are enough. Small steps are enough. Small steps are enough. I feel like not only myself, but a lot of us struggle with tackling a grand idea because we often rely on a moment of inspiration or motivation or the moment that we will feel ready to. So we kind of like wait and procrastinate until that happens. But by keeping the tips in mind from my last podcast about deciding which areas in your life you can choose to be more permissive or proactive about, we can start to pinpoint the aspects of our lives that are needing attention to be able to decide what to do when we aren't able to have those ideal things. I think that being proactive isn't always about preparing to have the right tools available, but it's about planning what you're gonna do in the inevitable cases that you don't have those tools available. So if you are in a place similar to one that I get to very often, where you feel like you've failed or you've kind of given up on something you had tried, or maybe you haven't started yet, so something that you're wanting to like bounce back from or start, I can relate to that. And anytime that I have had a lot of resistance to start or pick something back up, I personally have a running loop of thoughts that are like telling me that I failed or that the future is essentially fixed, that there's like no point, that I shouldn't try again because I've already gotten my answer. There would be no amount of effort or steps that would get me to where I want to go. And I'm better off staying here, staying comfortable, and essentially staying the same. But how are we going to go from there to continuously taking steps every day? Just like from a strategical standpoint, how are we going to do that? My theory is to think about taking one step towards yourself. So if your intention every day is just to say, today I'm going to take one step towards me, it's a lot more focused and it keeps it kind of grounded and intentional for yourself, and it doesn't put pressure on any one thing. It's just taking one step closer to me. And if you have the idea that you take one small step a day to get closer to yourself, you'll realize that you'll have enough in front of you to start making more sense of what's actually meaningful to you. And from there, you'll naturally be able to gravitate closer towards those things as you keep taking steps towards that. So the other idea in this concept is that your purpose is bigger than perfection. So this sums up the idea that the long and sustainable route of small steps is going to fuel and propel the fire that burns inside you enough to keep going when you've almost lost hope. So even when we think about that idea of getting 1% better every day, I personally feel a little bit like there still is pressure because you're trying to get better. And in this idea, I'm trying to take away all of the pressure about moving towards one specific thing or one specific goal, and slowly just starting to be intentional about getting closer to yourself. The more practice you have with that, the more experience you have taking steps, and the more experience you have taking steps, the easier it is to keep going. The more you learn about yourself, the less discipline you actually have to have, because you know what you need to do, when you need to do it, and why. So I feel like continuously taking these small steps every day with a different kind of mindset will ultimately naturally lead you to where you want to go. Some practical tips on how to be a little bit more proactive in other ways when trying to do this is to look at in what ways you are feeling vulnerable and how those vulnerable states are kind of keeping you where you are. And then on the flip side, looking at what you're doing in your strong states. So let's start with the vulnerable states. If you were to create a mini plan for the kinds of days that consistently seemed to block you from action or from taking a step towards yourself, what do you think you would put on that list? Personally, I struggle with things like critical or very mean thoughts, or having a lot of low energy, or there would be something like a circumstantial crisis. So I kind of have pinpointed the things that usually come up that I feel like I have a really hard time getting through, and not only that, but that keeps me from moving forward. In each of those categories, I've had to think about how much influence do I have in these moments to either stabilize myself, because sometimes I don't need to be taking leaps, I just need to be okay. How much influence do I have to neutralize? So going from being okay to maybe getting a little bit more comfortable and feeling good enough again to be able to take basic steps. Or how much influence do I have in these moments to change? So to go from potentially a neutralized position to taking a bigger action step. Whenever those challenges arise, I have a plan. So for me, on my critical and mean thoughts days, in this scenario, I decided that on my critical and mean thoughts day that I need to slow down. I need to put away the things that I feel pressure from. I need to turn off my phone and sit with myself and create a comfortable and safe place and practice compassion and potentially put on something soothing on the TV, go from being not okay to being okay. So it's a stabilizing example. And then in each category, like I said, depending on how much it affects you, you can look at what is the next best step for me. Whenever those days happen or those moments happen, those times, whatever time period that is for you, you know what you need to do that's going to be the best for you. And it's not about being better. It's not about taking a grand step or forcing yourself to do something. I think that that's not the best move in every case. So I think it just depends on the person, what kind of thoughts you're having, or what kind of states you're getting in, and then practicing something to shift yourself a little bit in whatever way I said, for the stabilizing, neutralizing, or completely changing. I don't think too much about why I get into a very low state or why I get in a very high state. I think that it's just a natural process, and I expect myself to have really low days, and I expect myself to have really high energy days and feel really strong, and I feel prepared for both. So on those strong days, I have thought about this idea of being proactive. So imagine that on your strongest days, you're aware, okay, I have a lot of energy today, and you think how am I gonna take action that is gonna help prepare my week or my day or myself for when I'm actually feeling more vulnerable. So if I have more energy, I will personally take an extra, 10 to 20 minutes to clean the house in the evening so that whenever I wake up, the next day, if I am feeling more low energy, that I don't wake up with a bunch of stuff to do already. Or will I be able to do something that's just like a little bit extra so that whenever I might have not been able to get it done this week because I had less time than I thought, that it will soften the impact, like the gap that there would have been if I started to feel like I got behind. There are so many examples, but I really want you to think about what would be like the most applicable to you. So the homework for this week is one that I really, 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 truly think that if you spent time on, like, I swear, I'm not trying to overwhelm you, like spent 5 to 10 minutes like really thinking about and just focused on it this week, that it will change your perspective on a lot of things. So the homework is to take a small step towards yourself today by writing out what I will do when I feel my lowest this week. So think about for yourself when you feel your lowest, or like if you're feeling your lowest now, what the next best tiny little thing is that you will do to either stabilize, neutralize, or change your state. So I would suggest picking 2 or 3 things that are like very specific. So like I said, like if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling like you have a lot of critical thoughts, really struggling with your confidence, like what is the next best thing for you to do, or the next best thing for you to hear that will get you from either not being okay to okay, or being okay to taking a small action step that gets you closer to yourself, or from taking a small action step to taking a bigger step today that will propel you forward in the direction that you want to go. I really, really, truly hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. I would suggest to listen to it as many times as you want, like walk through anything you need to with yourself, like with pen and paper, or making lists or charts, or like anything that helps you. Like we all learn in different ways, and I'm personally a visual person, and I've written these kinds of things out for myself, like a little guide for myself whenever I need it. So if you're like that and you would enjoy that, I love that for you, and you should do that. And otherwise, I really hope to see you in my next podcast next Monday, 7 in the morning, Central European time, to set ourselves up for another great week. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe because I post new podcast episodes and new long format videos every single week. Leave a comment letting me know how you're doing, something you've learned, or something you want to share. I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!